This is the Smitty and Middy Show.
Welcome to the Smitty and Middy Show bonus episode here as we preview the Toronto Blue Jays 2021 season. Joining us is Voice Guy, also known as our producer Kevin Hillsdon, Tyler Middleton beside me. Big thank you to our sponsors, Gold Line Curling, the choice of champions, and Dave Middleton at Sun Life Financial in Kincardine. Life's brighter under the sun. Kev, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. How you doing?
We've been better. We are fighting nonstop right now.
I upset him today. It's really fun.
I was going to say, before we start recording on this call, you guys sound like an old married couple. So I'm glad that the show has finally broken you.
We haven't been married that long, and that's the scary part. The relationship is rocky, and we just got started. You didn't even say hi to Roberto and Brett.
Two of the greatest Blue Jays.
Those are our kids.
Yes, two of the greatest Blue Jays to ever put on the uniforms in bobblehead form, right out in front of us. Mike Wilner loved them when we had him on the other week.
So did Ben Nicholson Smith. He loved the posters
and bobbleheads. Yeah, it's great,
and they're free.
Kevy, listen, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about the Blue Jays, and I know you're a big Blue Jays fan as well, sitting over in Toronto. Let's start off with the over-under, because that's an interesting number. 86.5 is the over-under for the Toronto Blue Jays this season in terms of wins.
Wait, can we mention?
I'll start with no.
We got to mention real quick. If you're listening to this on podcast form, make sure you're following Smitty Middy Show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and then go to the Smitty Middy Show, because this episode is our first one that's going to be on YouTube. So go check us out there. You can see our ugly mugs. I just want to make sure people know that they can go see us on YouTube for the first time. Now you can curate.
No, you can do it. You can do it because you cut me off.
All right, Kevin. So the over-under on the season is sitting at 86.5. What would you think? We're going to go to Kevin first. What do you think about that number?
Okay, first off, y'all need counseling.
We hate each other.
Second of all, before he even said the number, I was saying in my head, under. So I don't, whatever standard you want to set for the Jays this year, I just don't. Yeah, I don't think they're going to hit 86.5.
How could you know that it's going to be under before I even say the number? What if I said 62?
Yeah, I don't know.
Silence.
Yeah,
Silence.
I make good points.
That is just
62 is pretty...
just a classic sad Jays fan. Thinks they're going to suck no matter what the number is, right? Come on, Kevin. Come on.
There were holes in this lineup. There were holes in this lineup that the front office needed to plug, and they did a good job of finding some some Band-Aids here and there that may work, may not work. I mean, we prep for this, but we have a little thing later on in the show talking about our breakouts and our busts. And one of my busts is a new player. And I don't know. I am cautiously optimistic. I would like to think that these new guys coming in are going to steal the show, that are going to be great. These arms that they got are going to fill the void that Jays fans wanted, that ace Trevor Bauer or James Paxton, or even Taijuan Walker back.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do it this early, but we were promised by this front office, if anything, the rotation was going to get better. They said that they had a lot of arms, and now it was about quality, not quantity. And they didn't follow up on their promise. It's very disappointing. They went out and got George Springer. Whoop-de-doo. All right, we're very happy on the hitting side. But they did nothing to help this pitching staff. They brought in Robbie Ray, who was already here, and Steven Matz, who, yes, I mean, maybe Pete Walker does his magic, but they didn't do anything to address this rotation, really. Like, why couldn't they have spent that Simeon money on Taijuan Walker or on James Paxton?
I think they were relying on some of the younger guys to come up as well. They were relying on some of those guys that are supposed to be our pipeline guys to come up, and I think this was the year that they were relying on that.
But when you come out and you say that this is the year that we are going to get better in the pitching staff, nobody forced him to say that. He said it on his own will, and he didn't address it.
Well, there's essentially two schools of thought. Going into the offseason, you can either buy your way to have a solid starting rotation where you find proven pitchers with a track record that, history doesn't lie, and you can kind of track where they're going. Like, at least you knew when you signed Ryu, you think to yourself, okay, at his peak, he did this and this. Yes, he's had some injury troubles, but we're hoping to get the best out of him. That's cool. You sign a guy, hope for the best, fear the worst, all that. I totally subscribe to that. The second school of thought is addition by subtraction, is you let some of those starting pitchers walk, leaving room for Nate Pearson to have a full job on the starting rotation. Last year, he was still kind of competing for it. He got hurt, and Shoemaker got hurt, and a bunch of other guys. I think Walker was down for a little bit, and a bunch of other guys were hurt as well. So it's a constant carousel of starting pitchers.
Well, we've already seen injuries too, right? In the spring, we've already seen injuries that you can't predict. And if we take away those injuries, I don't think the Jays have that bad of a pitching staff.
Well, no matter what Mike Wilner says, you mentioned Shoemaker. Is anyone here thinking that he is not a better option in this rotation than a Ross Stripling? He started the first game of the playoffs for you and performed very well. And they let him walk for almost nothing to bring back a Stripling and a Tanner Roark. Tanner Roark was already signed, but there's options there. Like you can try and trade him for whatever piece. You can just buy him right out. There are options, and they just passed on it for. It's like they're comfortable with this rotation, and they have to see something we don't.
I'll tell you one thing I'm very comfortable with. I think Stripling and Tanner Roark will have at least double the amount of innings that Shoemaker has this year. I don't think he's had one healthy season Shoemaker has. And he's a great pitcher, and I feel bad for saying this, but if you really don't think a guy can give you a full healthy season, it might be best in your financial interest to pass on him.
If Tanner Roark if Matt Shoemaker can give me, if you're telling me he's going to give me 120 innings this year of A+ innings of the Matt Shoemaker we know and love, but Tanner Roark's going to give me 200 innings and he's going to get the bitch slapped out of him and there's going to be balls going 600 feet, then you know what? I'm going to take those 120 and we're going to plug around it. Tanner Roark had a atrocious season.
Sometimes plugging around, that's worse though.
With who?
Sometimes when you run into trying to plug that hole, it might get worse.
You're telling me an Anthony Kay or Alek Manoah we've seen come on strong, and we'll have that discussion later, but you're not telling me that these aren't going to plug around. You can't figure out those 80 innings. They can't give you better innings than what Tanner Roark was, at least last year.
I think the Jays pitching is going to be fine. I think it is. Despite the injuries early on, I think they're going to work their way through, and these guys are going to figure it out. I mean, you got a veteran guy on the hill, an ace that will control these guys. You got some young arms coming up, and overall, I'm not worried about it. While we're on the topic of pitching, though, the Blue Jays closer Kirby Yates out for the season. Who's going to be the guy?
Are we going to finish the numbers debate?
No, we're not.
Oh, okay.
We're not, because now we're on to pitching.
Okay.
And I want to know who's going to be the guy to finish off games for the Jays this year.
Oh, we were talking pre-recording. I think it's Romano all the way. The guy earned the job last year, then got hurt. I just love watching the guy pitch. Everything that I've seen in spring training suggests that there's so much life on his fastball that his off-speed stuff can have a bad day and he would be just fine. Like, yeah, he looks, it's like a higher arm slot Ken Giles is kind of what I'm looking at.
The bullpen debate to me comes down to, I'm going to tell you that there's at least going to be 5 guys. Let's put it at 3 to be safe, 3 or more saves, at least 5 guys with 3 or more. But I'm not going to rule out that you're going to see 4 guys with 5 saves. I'm not going to rule out you're going to see that, because I feel like that this pitching staff, or at least this coaching staff rather, they have really dedicated themselves now with losing Kirby Yates to Romano was going to pitch those high leverage innings, but the high leverage innings, it could come in the 8th, could come in the 7th. He could earn his save in the 8th, but it's not a stat save. If you see the big boppers for the Yankees coming up with a 1-run lead in the 8th inning, it's going to be Romano's ball. And then you're going to get a matchup for that last piece. If it's Chatwood, if it's Dolis, if it's Mazza, if it's Ryan Baraki, if it's whoever, you're going to get patchwork for that last inning if that comes to it. So Romano is going to be your number 1 guy, but that doesn't mean necessarily that he's going to be your save stat leader.
Well, they might move from that though. Like, I'm not saying they're not going to put Romano in those high leverage innings, but sometimes for a pitcher's sake, it might be easier to tell them that you're going to have a certain inning, right? For guys out of the pen, sometimes it's just
I don't
easier.
agree with it. I don't agree with that mentality.
But it's easier sometimes for guys to say, hey, listen, you got the 9th, right? The 9th inning's yours. Sometimes it might be easy. Sometimes it might be tough. The game has moved away from that a little bit over the years. to where it is now, like you just said, where Romano is probably going to get into the game wherever they need him most.
Yeah,
and it is more times than not, I bet you, not going to be the ninth inning.
Let's say safely, I'm not an MLB closer, but I've gone through, even in just a little senior league that we play in, where I have done those closer roles and I have done the starting roles. And all I'm saying to you,
big difference between closing out the major leagues and closing out an inning in the ninth where Noah Smith is batting.
Noah Smith has never batted against me, and if he did, it would be strike 3 all day. What I'm telling you is there is a different mentality for sure, even at the low level where I'm talking about. The mentality is incredibly different between the first, second, third, fourth, all the way to the 8th inning, and then that 9th inning. Those last 3 outs are the hardest outs to get. The hardest outs to get. It takes someone special. That's why it's made the closers sometimes, like the best closer of all time, Mariano Rivera. He wasn't an explosively, his stuff was not it wasn't incredible stuff. He just had that mentality where you were not going to get a hit off of him. And I don't agree with what they're going to do. I'm just telling you what the Jays are going to do this year.
For those of people listening that have maybe heard mumblings, or maybe those family friends that have heard us and heard Smitty Middy and have heard about our baseball history, we all played on the same college team in 2016.
And you were the closer.
And I was the closer that year. It was, I don't know why the whole time I'm thinking about this stupid thing. It was like almost like a grad quote in this video or something. And I remember it was all these athletes, and I got asked a question about like, what stood out to you? What stood out? And I'm thinking, okay, well, we're second year into this team even being a team in the league. I was like, okay, I have the most career saves in Fanshawe history. And the guy blew it up. I had like 2 or 3 saves.
Do you remember, we're going to go way off topic, but do you remember when they were trying to find who the closer is going to be on that team? And I believe who was it? Joey?
They tried Joey at first.
That started off the year, and somebody hit a baseball so far. Every now and then I sit in my backyard and watch it go by in orbit because that ball was absolutely crushed. And that's how quick he lost his closer's job.
Joey's listening to this right now. Astrologists
watch the ball. It's in astrology books now. It was that ball was hit so hard.
Point of the story is there that we are not major league closers, but you can kind of carry over some of the same lessons into how you're going to use guys in these games if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, right? Like Romano, I think, to go back to your point, is going to be where you need him most. And I think that's kind of how the Blue Jays bullpen and their pitching staff is going to work all season long.
Would you guys be surprised to see, Romano end the year with only 17 saves, but be the high leverage pitcher and be the best pitcher in this bullpen, but have less than 20 saves on a winning team?
I'll be honest.
No, go ahead, Noah.
I'll be honest with you. I'll be surprised if he gets 15. Right? I just don't think the Jays are going to have that many saves this year in general.
It's not saying he's not the best pitcher, the best pitcher in the bullpen. It's just saying saves is a very specific stat, and he needs to pitch in those very specific opportunities to get that stat.
I think the stats speak for itself now. And the more that I was listening to you guys just saying that, I keep thinking about the Tampa Bay Rays right now, and with their situation with Nick Anderson, with Pete Fairbanks, and then you came to playoff time, and it's so valuable when you give many relievers those high leverage situations, because in the playoffs, as we know, everything is high leverage. 6th inning, the Bautista bomb that's so famous in the Jays happened in the 7th inning. Sam Dyson wasn't their closer at the time, and they had a bunch of other guys in their bullpen, but maybe that was the time looking back at it where analytics speak that maybe your closer needs to come into more high leverage stuff if the top of the order is up in the 7th, right?
Yeah, we go back to the Rays of last year, and even in the series against the Jays in Game 1, close game, Anderson is in the, I believe it was the 6th inning, I think. If it wasn't earlier, he was in early because that was the opportunity that the Jays had to score a run. So they brought in their best pitcher at the time. I think the years of the Heath Bells and everyone getting so excited when you hear the bells and him running in, those years are done. You're not going to have those closers anymore, or at least very rare. And you see it like drafting fantasy of who's going to get saves.
I'd like to think Terry Francona had some part to play in that. He had an arsenal back in 2015, 2016 with his Cleveland Indians roster, or sorry, the Cleveland baseball team, or whatever the hell they're going to call themselves this year. I don't know what that is, but he had Cody Allen as kind of his ninth inning guy. And then he had an invaluable weapon in Andrew Miller, being able to go to him for mid innings and give him 2-3 innings. He had like a closer that could give you some longevity. It was great.
So are they only going to wear jerseys that just say Cleveland? They're not going to have the Indian jersey, obviously.
Probably.
I don't know. They
haven't made any decisions yet, so I think it's impossible to say. Who knows? Let's move on, though.
Let's move on. Cancel culture, but go on.
Sorry,
well, I mean, let's be honest. That is the fact that there was a team called the Indians in 2019, 2020.
I'm surprised it made it.
Is
incredible. If you're gonna make it politically correct, just put an Indian guy on the front. Like, sure.
Well, there was. He was just a racist
guy
Indian
or whatever, right?
He was just a really racist cartoon Indian.
Yeah.
I believe his name was Chief Wahoo. That's how racist it was.
It was Chief Wahoo. But I mean,
that is a white guy. That is a white guy's like first option at a. What should we name this this racist mascot? Chief Wahoo. Yep, let's do it. Let's run with it.
Let's move on now. Talk about the lineup for the upcoming season. We were toying with the idea of everyone putting their 1 through 9 and kind of giving their ideas on the lineup. But I think what we kind of settled on here is that Tyler's going to give us his 1 through 9, and then me and Kevin will essentially tell him how many of those 1 through 9 are in the wrong spot. So, Middy, go ahead. Let us know your 1 through 9.
Granted, these are going to fluctuate, but I think when you see the first,
we need like a Donald Trump button when he's doing this. Just someone to push and go wrong, fake.
I'm playing this off of what I think the first playoff game is going to look like. So we all know how the year's probably going to start, but this is how I think it's going to finish. So we're going to lead off with George Springer. I think we can almost agree with that. Bo Bichette, Lourdes Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez, Vladdy, Simeon, Rowdy, Kirk, Biggio. That's how I think your first playoff lineup is going to go. And to me, when you're looking at that is a strong lineup 1 through 9 with everyone there can go deep at pretty much any point, I believe.
Yeah.
Where are my flaws?
Well, there's a few, and I think me and Kevin they're not flaws. Let's say that, right, Kev? They're not flaws because I think no matter how you shape this lineup, it's going to be a strong offensive lineup. I'm going to say this, and I'm not just going to say this because we had this conversation with Mike Wilner last week. I do not like Springer in the leadoff spot because I think that he, out of everyone in the lineup, has the most chance to do damage with guys on base. I think he's that guy for the Jays, and I don't like him leading off with nobody on base at least once a game, right? I still think that's a philosophy that you have to follow. And for the Jays, I'd rather you see you put someone up front like a Biggio. I'd even rather have Bichette hit leadoff. Anybody, I like George Springer in like the 2-hole, and I think that's probably where I would start off this lineup.
Yeah. I'm trying to measure both points there because my lineup is it's not static, man. This team is so like I was a little surprised when Jonathan Davis made the starting roster, to be completely honest. Like half the team are outfielders right now. I feel like a few pitchers might get to play outfield this year. Just with the way this roster is built, but like Biggio will plug in everywhere. I don't agree with putting him 9th though. I don't know. It's a tall task for Charlie Montoyo. If you bat Biggio leadoff, then you got 6 righties after him. Then do you worry about righty lefty? I do agree with Noah in the sense that Mike Wilner brought up a good point a couple weeks back or longer, that, batting a guy leadoff means you guarantee at least once a game he has no runners in scoring position. And more often than not, you're not really counting on your 9-hole hitter to get on. So the lineup could turn over and you could have nobody on base. So the players that you want to put in the best position, I mean, Ty, your lineup's fine.
Well,
to be honest, your lineup's probably fine. But I think Biggio could move around a little bit.
The Biggio thing in the 9 spot, I think, is a no-brainer. I really do. Because the 9 spot is typically a spot that's completely empty. You're not expecting anything. Without him there, it's a Kirk. And here's my problem. A Kirk or a Jansen gets on base in front of a George Springer, a Bo Bichette, or Lourdes Gurriel, somewhere along those lines. You take away one of those powers that those guys have, one of the tools that they have, and that's speed, because they cannot run through an Aleandro Kirk standing there at 240 pounds of flubber. They could not run through him. That takes away one of the tools that they have. You have a Biggio on base, a guy who has not been caught in professional baseball stealing. A stat that we forget. I mean, it's incredible. So you take that, like, he's going to get on base more times than not in that 9 hole, and it just adds length to that lineup. It's all about length. We all know that when you look into that dugout and you see the coach go, okay, it's bottom. You can't take a break, but it's a different feeling than when they say top of the order.
No, gone are the days when you look at the bottom of the order and you think that it's easy, right? Like, no one does that anymore. You're not looking at the bottom of the order going, oh, bottom, right? It's just the order. That's just what it is. It goes through.
You're telling me
on these good teams, on good baseball teams, which I think the Toronto Blue Jays are this year, there isn't really going to be holes. And if there is a hole, it's going to move no matter where you put it. It's in the lineup somewhere, whether it's
not
9,
if you spread it out,
whether it's 8. Spreading it out doesn't mean anything. It's going to be there anyway.
There's spots that you can put guys to which they're not empty.
No.
What is, let's put Danny Jansen or Aleandro Kirk. What is their best? Let's say it's Kirk, because I believe that Kirk is going to take over the starting job at some point. So Kirk, what is his best tool?
Can we revisit that later, please?
We'll revisit that. What is Kirk's best tool? He puts the ball in play. He doesn't strike out. Okay. So I want him
suspect at best.
I want him somewhere in the lineup where he's hitting behind somebody who's going to be able to move over for the guy behind him to drive in, because that's kind of what he is going to be looked for if he's just putting the ball in play. And this is also a guy we will revisit later who his batting average has been really good in every single level that he's gone to. His hitting stats are very high for a guy who is just making his major league debut. All I'm saying is that there are spots you can put these guys in the lineup that their tools play. And that doesn't mean just hiding what you think your worst hitter is in the 9 spot. The 9 spot does not mean that's just where our worst hitter is going to go.
It is the guy who's going to get the least amount of at-bats, though. That's just the math.
Maybe.
No, not maybe.
What if you end on the 9th hitter? What if the 9th hitter has the last at bat of the game? Smart ass.
Every single game of the season.
What if it happens? Okay. What if it happens? Then they have the same amount of at bats. So don't tell me they're going to have different amount of at bats, but they could have the same amount of at bats.
If the 9 hitter is the last out of every single baseball game this season, I will give you a hug and $1 million.
But it's not
because it's not going to happen.
I don't need the hug. You can keep the hug.
Well, I'm going to give you a hug
but it's ridiculous for you to sit there and say that in the 9th inning, I really want Calvin Biggio to be up at some point in the inning. With all these batters in this lineup, he is not the guy that I'm hoping is going to come to bat. I want Bo Bichette there. I want Vladdy. I want your Springers. I want Gurriel. I want Teoscar. Any of those guys. Pretty much anyone but Kirk. I want coming up before Calvin Biggio. So yes, having at the bottom of the order is not a problem, because then in the 9th inning, if you have 9-1-2, guess what? I still have Calvin Biggio in my 9 spot.
I'm at a loss for words, Kevin. I'm at a loss for words, I tell you.
He's very fired up right now. He's very energetic.
Fired up. And I think he goes off and tells us how much he loves Aleandro Kirk, and then he says he's the only guy in the lineup he doesn't want to hit. Right? It's just you have to pick someone.
I have a counter argument to Middy's point. And I think the 9 hole is underutilized and is still a afterthought for most managers. It's the reason why still, I believe, over 99% of all National League games played, the pitcher is batting in the 9 hole, because statistically they want to give that spot the least amount of at bats.
Well, we're not talking pitchers though.
No, I know. But there's a reason why they don't put this Calvin Biggio on their team batting 9th and the pitcher in the 8 hole, because they don't think of it as flipping the order over. They think of it as they need the least amount of at bats.
Yeah, but we're not talking about somebody who's an empty at bat. That's just not the same point.
It is the same point. You're using it just as a placeholder. So don't think about the pitcher as the pitcher. Think about the pitcher as your worst hitter.
What? No.
Think about the pitcher spot as your worst hitter. So your worst hitter, who do you think the worst hitter in that lineup is?
In the Blue Jays lineup?
Yes.
I honestly like all the hitters, to be honest with you.
Well, you have to pick one.
But Kirk is the weakest of the hitters.
So you want your worst hitter.
So what you're telling me is that Aleandro Kirk and the pitchers are interchangeable. God. Because that's what you're telling me.
No, it's not.
They're not the same at bat. And we are actually seeing not a huge trend, but there are pitchers who do hit in the 8 spot. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense because either way, the pitcher has to come
You're
up.
admitting it. You're admitting it right now.
Because he's a pitcher. It's a pitcher. Pitchers can't hit. They have a 0 at bat. They do not hit the ball. Unless you are Madison Bumgarner, you cannot hit the ball if you're a pitcher. So yes, I don't even want them fucking hitting. I don't want them hitting. I would rather have a DH in that spot because having the pitchers hit is ridiculous in the first place.
I'm just saying.
So pitchers can't hit.
You're contradicting yourself.
You can't compare Aleandro Kirk or Calvin Biggio to a pitcher spot.
No, I'm just
Having
saying.
said that, I do think Shohei Ohtani will be a better hitter than he is a pitcher this year. Have you seen? He's getting freaking lit up this year in spring training.
I always thought he was a better hitter than he was a pitcher.
Oh, way better.
I always thought he'd have a way better career if he just went with DH or even playing.
The guy that throws 100 from right field.
He was actually a guy
he'd have a longer career and a better career if he just put the pitching down.
He was a guy that I was trying to pull up my fantasy draft boards this year and get him in, the 12th round, the 10th round, but he was usually gone in the 8th round. People reached really far for him as a pitcher.
Both of his versions were undrafted in my fantasy league.
That doesn't make any sense.
Sure it does. I don't think he's a great pickup.
Man, can you have one good point? Just this whole show?
I have had good points. I don't know how many people are in Kevin's fantasy league, but if there's not that many, then it makes sense why he wouldn't.
12 people.
Okay.
We'll start the marriage counseling for you guys.
Is it a roto or a points?
It's head-to-head points, but we have like 50 categories. It's the stupidest thing. And if you're listening and you're my league manager, it's great. It's a great format. Please
just
don't
tell him it's dumb. You can tell him it's dumb.
I know. I'm still new. I think I drafted a hell of a team too.
All right, Kevin, we'll go to you first here on the next point here. Everyone picked out a breakout player, a bust, and their top sleeper fantasy pick. So we'll go to you first, and we'll start with the breakout players, and we'll go around here. For the Blue Jays, who do you think is going to be the breakout player this year, Kev?
Let's see. I had two, and I don't want to steal somebody else's, so I'm gonna keep mine to the point because I know you guys have further points that you wrote down. My breakout players, though, and I know this sounds ridiculous because he's been the projected breakout player for the last however many years he's been in the league, but I think Vlad Jr. is just gonna go off. The guy shed 38 pounds. I'm watching him in spring training. He's seeing more pitches. He looks like he's seeing the ball better. Looks like he's squaring up the ball better. And that ball, as always, just jumps off his bat. So it'll be so fun to see this year. And second one, and I'll let Middy go a little more into detail on this because he had, I think, notes on it. But I love taking Steven Matz out of the NL, out of New York. I don't care where the Jays play this year. I just think him and Pete Walker, especially watching him in spring training as well, I think it's a deadly duo. So my two picks are Vlad Jr., Steve Matz, obviously health pending. I hope Matt's arm can stay healthy, and we're all pitchers. He needs to keep the sinker low, work with the changeup low, and stop hanging his freaking curveball. I've seen it so many times. It's going to get knocked out of the yard. Go on, please.
I'm just going to touch on the Vladdy thing real quick. I think one of the most important parts to Vladdy's year is it's going to translate from defense to offense. I think if he's comfortable playing first base, and he has looked a little bit more comfortable, and it's going to come with time. If they want him to play first base, that's fine, leave him there. But as he has to work less at first base, he can work more in the cage because there's only a certain amount of hours in a day. So as he gets more comfortable at first base, I think his hitting will come. My concern, and it's not really a concern because I do think that Vladdy has the eye to have a huge on-base percentage, a really good batting average, a lot of RBIs. I don't know if the home runs are going to get there. And the reason I tell you that is because the launch angle is just not there. And I don't want to change his swing because he hits the ball so hard. I don't want to change the swing. I just don't think you're going to see the 40 to 50 home run seasons from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but that's okay if he can hit the ball as hard as he does and find some holes.
Yeah, no, I agree. He put a lot of work in, and it was clearly you can see it with how he looks. Less round.
You have to check out if you're not watching it, you have to watch it just round,
for this. More skinny Vlad. Is that what we called him on the podcast when we first found out he lost 40
less you, more me?
Those are the exact hand movements that Noah makes at the bar before approaching a girl.
Yeah.
He or she. Is she Vlad later or Vlad now?
Vlad
Is she
Jr. or Vlad Jr. in 2021?
No
Yeah.
comments because I actually
That's
I really
how we
like his
know.
girlfriend. So
But I
Yes.
think Vlad is going to be. He's actually my pick for breakout player this year as well because I think. Listen, Vlad actually, when you look at it, hasn't had a terrible start to his major league career. He batted 272 one year, 262 the other year. It's just that he's not what we thought he was going to be with the 30 plus home runs or whatever that is. I think that will change this year. I know you don't think he's going to be a big home run guy. I do think he will get that this year because with that launch angle being low, you're gonna lose some home runs for sure. But he is hitting the ball so hard. The velo off his hits right now, like we were seeing some in spring training that were just absolutely crazy, and we saw some home runs. And if they play in Dunedin for longer than the first 3 homestands like they are, we might see some of those low line drive home runs from Vlad because it's not that much to get it out to left field.
no, and it's just I'm not saying he's not. He could be a 30 home run guy. I don't think that's. I think in the MLB nowadays, that's not a crazy number for. I mean, a first baseman to reach. Period. So I think 30 is very reachable. It's just if he did have that launch angle that you see from home run hitters, 50 home runs is not out of the question because he hits the ball. I believe he had the 3 hardest hit balls in the majors last year. Like you routinely see balls in triple digits coming off his bat. So if there was just a little bit of a launch angle, you see more home runs. I just don't think it's a problem if you see 30 home runs from Vladdy.
Hey, and I'd like to start my next point with I love Sportsnet. Thank you for employing me.
What? You just gave away why we have so many sports guests.
But they overhyped him like crazy. And they made him to be this new second coming of like Jesus almost. Like they made him out to be his dad. And they shouldn't have done that. Which actually it allowed for Bichette and Biggio to kind of come up under the radar. But they gave Vlad way too tall of a task, man. Like they're projecting him to be these crazy numbers. And now I guess he's overrated because we overrated him to start with.
Well, I mean, you did see
he was probably going to get that anywhere he went.
Though, he was the number 1 prospect, and he had minor league numbers that had never been seen before, like some of the best minor league numbers to ever happen. And I mean, just look at the circus that was his MLB debut. Like there was reporters from every walks of every life at the Rogers Center that day. But I will move on to my breakout pick, if that's okay with everybody.
About time.
You wanted to revisit the Aleandro Kirk thing.
Oh, God.
So I'm going to revisit it right now, baby. My breakout is Aleandro Kirk, and I will tell you what. This guy we have seen through his minor league career, and granted, he has only reached high A before he makes a major league roster. That is insane. High A to an MLB roster. He's batted 354, 290, 288, and 299 in his minor league career. This guy has an electric bat. He will learn how to play defense under Danny Jansen for the first little bit. Pete Walker, being the pitching guru that he is, will be able to teach him how to call a game. We've already seen him being given pitchers that he is going to start with Robbie Ray. I think that this guy, it's going to be a matter of time before they go, you know what? Danny Jansen can't hit at a major league level, and this guy can hit. So what are we going to do? Are we going to get rid of a little bit of defense behind the plate? And I don't even think it's that much to allow for more offense in this lineup that's already going to score 12 runs a game, 10 runs a game, 9 runs a game. I just think it's a matter of time before Aleandro Kirk gets the majority of the starts. I still think it's going to be a 60-50 split, but I think it's going to end up 60-50 to Kirk by the end of the year.
That math doesn't make sense, but go on.
60-40.
60-50 split. 110% all the time, Kevin.
Yeah,
It's
come on. First round of playoffs when they get swept.
Exactly. I only give 110. Okay, 60-40 takes.
I agree with you, Ty. I think Kirk will end up being the better hitter. You're seeing with every good team is they have, and maybe the stars aren't the catchers anymore. JT Realmuto being a star means that his bat is there along with his defense, right? Buster Posey during those World Series campaigns, great batter, better defensively. And when pitchers love throwing to that catcher, the confidence is there, the bat comes. Yadier Molina, great hitter, even better defensively. So I just think with Kirk's bat, it's raising some flags that his blocking is subpar. His game calling has yet to be seen. And I think his bat is ultimately what will keep him in the lineup, but his defense will keep him in the majors.
But we're talking about a guy who, again, hasn't had to block and had to call games. I mean, calling games, I think, it's another thing that's kind of gone from the game nowadays, because everything is coming from that stupid thing on the wrist or coming from the coaches in the dugout. So calling a game, it is about comfort. And let's be honest, he's a big target. And a lot of people or a lot of pitchers have said that they enjoy throwing to him. So now we're looking at blocking, and he hasn't had that much maturing in the minor league system. So a year with the MLB team, everything you mentioned there was he's a good hitter and a good catcher, a good hitter and a good catcher. Danny Jansen has not been a good hitter. He's a fine catcher. He has not been a good hitter. And I think if they had any inkling that Aleandro Kirk couldn't be the starter by this year, they would have just sent him to the alternate site, sent him to the minors, and kept Reese McGuire around, because they had to place him on waivers to move Kirk onto this roster.
I have another thought, Middy, and I wonder what you think about this. The other thing that I'm looking at when I see Real Muto, when I see Posey, when I see even Jansen, these guys are in shape. And it's no secret that Aleandro Kirk looks like he, eats at Taco Bell for lunch every day. Not to sound racist or anything, sub it with any fast food.
Why is that racist?
I don't know. Is he Mexican? Is he? No,
okay. I'm on
that's
the
why I
racist
didn't want to
right
sound racist.
Speaking of which, I went to Taco Bell today. It was closed. I was really upset. Keep going.
So you ripped the label off your water bottle because they don't sponsor us, but you're going to plug Taco Bell for 2 minutes?
You already did it.
That's fine. Anyways, I see Posey and he can play first. Real Muto gets innings at first. Jansen, Russell Martin. I know Jansen doesn't really have a secondary position right now, but he could play other positions if you really had to. And Russell Martin played some shortstop, some third base for the Jays. I just see with Kirk's height and his immobile stature. I don't even know if I phrased that right, but his immobile stature.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
I said 50 plus 60 for percentage. So,
but here's the thing.
Works.
I think he's limited. And I think the DH spot is so clogged up with 4 outfielders right now that I don't think him having a good bat is enough to keep him in the lineup. They're going to want to keep Teoscar's bat in the lineup, even though his defense is subpar. They're going to want to keep Lourdes there with the day off, Randall with the day off. They're not going to want to use these guys all as pinch hitters.
I'll give you one word argument, just one word before we move on to our bus. Okay. Well, that's 2 words technically.
Well, we got Noah's breakout.
We already said Vladdy.
Vlad.
Oh,
he just jumped onto your train. I'll give you 2 words. It's technically 2 words. Benji Molina. Go on.
Oh, he's giving me such big Benji vibes. Such big Benji vibes. I love it.
I like Kirk. I do. And I think he's going to have a future. It's a big jump to make. He has very big jumps to make.
Yeah. He basically went from my beer league team to the majors.
Yes. So. What do they say the biggest jump to make is?
From single to engaged.
Yes, that is actually
that's a big jump.
I think
jump to make. The biggest jump ever, I would say, would be about
at least 20 feet,
55 inches.
At least 20 feet. That's probably the biggest jump. No, but I mean, in terms of Major League Baseball, the biggest jump to make is from what AAA to the major.
But
leagues.
He's already done it. He's already made the jump to the majors, and
he hasn't.
The first stat that I read off with hitting 354. Surprise! That was last year in the majors. I lied.
It's a big jump.
I lied. He hit 299 in the majors last year.
Yeah.
I want you to be right, Ty. Everyone that we say are going to break out, I want us all to be right.
He would not be having this conversation if that's what he hit the majors last year.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'd be on the hype train. Anyways, Kevin, let's go to you. Yeah. Your bus for this season. Who do you think is going to break our hearts?
All right, get the booze ready. Boo!
I tried. No one yelled at me.
George Springer. I think he's a bust.
Why is that? Give me a little bit on that.
In what way?
He hit 265 last year. He's only ever a career 270 hitter. I think in the regular season, you're not going to get your money value. Obviously, everyone's reporting that you're paying for his postseason and stuff, right? Team needs to get to the postseason, and then your pitching carries you in the postseason. It's not even a secret about that. Houston did great when they had Springer, when they had all that, but they had the 3-headed dragon at the front with Greinke, Verlander. They had Charlie Morton. They had Lance McCullers, I think, in his prime. They had Dallas Keuchel. Like they were just so deep at pitching that any hitters could have plugged into that lineup. It's the best pitching staff that wins, and I don't know if George Springer is going to make that much of a difference.
I think this organization saw the best player available out there, and they definitely overpaid for him. I don't think anyone will argue that they did
years in a row, I think.
And you know what? Good for them. I'm not going to argue with it, because they went out and they got the best player available, and they anteed up and they paid the money that they had to pay to get him. So is he going to live up to that contract dollar wise? It's so tough, because what do we, as a veteran, what do we hold standards up to? What standards do we hold them up to? Is it in the room? Like, how can we measure what a Joe Thornton means to the Maple Leafs away from just stats? He's a veteran player. I think he's definitely an upgrade defensively in the outfield when you move everyone around. And
the difference between Joe Thornton and George Springer is, when I'm bitching about it over a beer with my friends, hey, he's getting paid the league minimum. You could move him to the fourth line.
I thought we were talking about Joe Thornton playing the outfield for a second, and I was very confused.
That would be hilarious, actually.
It would be. Here's my thing with Springer. I think, not to say that Blue Jays management and the Blue Jays organization needed to teach people a lesson, if you will, but people have been asking for how long? Go out and spend money. Go out and spend money and get us someone. And like you said, they've done it. Ryu, Springer. Will it pay off? Who knows? And if it doesn't, then maybe fans will finally stop being, go spend the most money, and maybe they'll think smarter about it, right?
Yeah, it's such a Toronto thing to say, go and get the best guy, and then when they do, it's like, well, he's not going to perform to that contract. Yeah, he's probably not. But they went out and got the guy they wanted to get, and he's still going to be, like, his floor is a extremely solid major league outfielder, right? And his cap could be a contender for an MVP. Like, we don't know. So let's sit back.
Well, and I think that's where I don't want to put words into your mouth, Kev. I don't think you meant bust in the fact that he's going to be a terrible baseball player this year. I just don't think he's worth the money. And I think that's kind of where you were going with that.
I could name 3 or 4 Jays I think are going to have better years than him hitting wise. So
I'll go on the same kind of track with that one, and where the Jays went this offseason with my bust. And I'll go with Semien because of the exact same reasons. Not because I think he's going to have an absolutely terrible season, but because I think the Jays just paid too much money for him. $18 million in 1 year, I think is way too much money for him. And I think you could have spent that money elsewhere.
I don't know. You guys just you went with the new guys and just basically said they paid too much for it. And I get it. I get where you're coming from, but these guys have yet to have a major league at bat in a Blue Jays uniform. So let's we have to look at what the upgrades are. Marcus Semien is an upgrade over Calvin Biggio, I think, with his bat and with at second base, because you can move with everything you do to move him around.
Travis Shaw though.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Now. Yeah, sorry. We moved Travis Shaw. Oh, there goes 4 hits all time.
No, they moved Biggio over to third, so now he's definitely an upgrade over Shaw. I'll give him that.
Yeah, so it's all up. Let's calm down. Let's let them get some at bats under their belt as Blue Jays, and then we'll revisit it. But I think what both of you are saying is that you just don't like how much money they spend on these players. But unfortunately, you have to, as a Toronto organization, spend some money on players to bring them in.
Fair enough.
All right, I'll just go to my bust, and based on where I put him in the lineup, maybe it doesn't quite prove it, but Teoscar Hernandez is my bust. This is a guy who has had flashes where, half the year or for a month or two, he gets extremely hot and he hits 6 home runs in 6 days. He's been proven to do those things, but he goes through major slumps. Last year, he had a breakout. That was because it was a 2-month season. He got really hot for 2 months. I am always so scared with guys coming off of their breakout year, because all of a sudden they get on to pitchers' radars. Everybody gets noticed in this lineup. Like, there's nobody that gets hidden. But when you are in the 4 hole for a major league team, people find your weaknesses. And I don't know if he can adjust. So to me, I think last year gets thrown out for Teoscar Hernandez, and he is what he has been, which is why I would have been very open to moving him this year.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Middy. I noticed when what was the game? It was just televised. The last game was Phillies Jays, and I can't remember for the life of me the minor league pitcher that was pitching against him, but they clearly had a book on him because I believe they were about 7-8 pitches into the at bat, and I don't think he saw a fastball. So they're definitely seeing something. Now maybe I'm reading too much into this, because spring training, you pick a pitch, you hone in on it, and you work on it. Like, that could have easily just been it. But Teoscar was holding off on it, wasn't really biting, but it's I think maybe he has a book on pitchers reading him as much as they have one on him. So we don't know, but history has told us that you're right and that players can get hot over a 2-month span, which is what last year was.
All right, quickly here, gentlemen, what is your fantasy pick sleeper for this upcoming season? We kind of left this open to you guys, whether you wanted it to be a Jays player or just anyone in Major League Baseball. For all you fantasy listeners out there, a little sleeper pick. Kev, once again, I'll start with you, and then we'll go around the circle.
Mitty, you go. I've been going first. You go.
Well, that's the whole point. Is why I'm going to you, is because you go first.
You
wanted me to captain.
All right,
you wanted
fine.
me to captain this ship. I'll captain this ship the way I see fit, sir.
Wow. Sassy, but I'll take it. Okay, I wrote like a whole page on this guy because I was so impressed. I saw him on Sportsnet for highlight reels. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. This guy was undrafted in my league. I can't speak for everyone else. I don't think he's somebody to pick up right now, but he is definitely somebody to watch throughout the year. This guy's name is Tanner Houck, Houck. They've nicknamed him around the league as the right-handed Chris Sale. And if you watch any highlights of him, you'll know why. He has that sidearm delivery it just looks so nasty. And he's got this little 2-seam movement on his fastball. And he explodes around like 93, 95. So it's a nice beam right in there. His 2020 stats when he got called up after all the injuries. He's in the Red Sox system, by the way, if I haven't mentioned that yet. After all the injuries that the Red Sox sustained last year with Chris Sale and everyone else, he pitched 17 innings, allowed 6 hits, 1 earned run, 21 strikeouts. And then that was it. They didn't make the playoffs. They moved on. He went home. I don't know. Went home. I don't know what he does.
Is he on the Major League roster to start the year?
He is a dark horse to make the Major League roster simply because Eduardo Rodriguez is starting day to day. Chris Sale still needs some work. And I have the whole Red Sox rotation written out, and it's a bunch of seasoned vets, man. The Red Sox are not ready to win right now, but they need people to eat up innings. Like I'm looking at this, it's Chris Sale on the injured reserve or injured list, whatever it's called now. Eduardo Rodriguez, Nate Eovaldi, who's got the ball opening day, I believe. Garrett Richards, Martin Perez, Nick Pivetta, and Matt Andriese. So it's just a bunch of guys that you've heard their names tossed around on different teams. So barring any injuries, I think Tanner Houck gets the ball this year, and I think he's going to be unreal.
What I noticed there was how bad the Red Sox are going to be because that pitching staff is just atrocious. On a side note for fantasy, something I did in my keeper league, I went out and picked up Noah Syndergaard, Chris Sale, Luis Severino, and Justin Verlander, who are all sitting there. We had unlimited IL spots, and now I am set up for about the next 14 years with pitchers on keepers league. So make sure you look out for those pitchers hiding a little bit lower. Severino and Syndergaard are to be back about mid-season. Verlander, you might get a couple starts out of him, but obviously in the keeper league, it's going to be worth it in the long run. For my fantasy pick, I'm going to stay with the Blue Jays. Rafael Dolis is someone we have talked about to be in the saves mix. I am a guy who always leaves my relief pitchers for very last because I think you can find saves out there. And really, we are one injury away in that bullpen, which I don't want to say, from Dolis really taking over and taking control. Last year's 1.5 ERA, 5 saves. In Japan, before coming over to the majors, had 37 saves. He had 37 saves in Japan, and I just think with the Blue Jays bullpen being so up in the air and them using Romano in different opportunities, Dolis is going to he might get you 10 saves, he might get you 12 saves, but he's going to get a lot of innings, and he's going to keep your ERA low.
Might get you one.
He might get you none.
Who knows?
Hey, I like that pick.
It's not a bad pick. It's not
because Romano had arm injuries at the end of last year, so they're probably not going to look to him to go like back to back to back. So if they're in a save situation like 3 nights in a row or 2 nights in a row, they might alternate.
Well, who was the guy that closed out to get the Blue Jays a berth in the playoffs last year? It was Rafael Dolis, who they handed the ball to. Granted, Romano was down, but they handed the ball to him and he got the final save. So just someone to keep an eye on if you're looking for saves out there, or if you're in a hold save combined category or points league there, because he will get some holds. No,
my sleeper pick is Ricky Romero.
Babe, remember he tried to make a comeback with the Tampa Bay Rays a couple of years ago?
No, I don't.
He had that weird thing where he had like a thing in his eyebrow, right? There was just like a hole in his eyebrow. It wasn't a hole, but he just didn't grow an eyebrow right there. Do you not remember that?
I don't know how you remember this kind of thing.
That is the one thing.
You don't know who Beetlejuice is, but you remember that freaking Ricky Romero had a
question for you Jays fans out there. Who's more likely to make a comeback, Ricky Romero or Anthony Ghost as a pitcher? I think he's still in the Indians.
Man, Anthony, have you seen him? He's popping like 98 on corners. He looked impressive.
Kid's throwing cheese.
Yeah.
I would put money on him.
Okay, your fantasy pick, not Ricky Romero.
What? Why not? I would actually pick him.
Because he's a podcaster now.
Fantasy pick for Podcast Fantasy League. Take Ricky Romero. This guy's going to be fantastic. No. Going with the Blue Jays and their pitching staff, pick Julian Merriweather because I think he's going to get some innings this year. And I think he's going to surprise you with the amount of innings he gets for the Blue Jays. He's going to come in there. He didn't pitch very much last year. Didn't pitch fantastic. His ERA was like 4.19 or something like that. Wasn't great. But I think this year, if he gets the chance, he'll prove that he can throw. And then, like we've talked about so many times before already, the Blue Jays are just going to go with whoever is throwing the best, right? I mean, if Merriweather comes in and he starts the season hot, I think he'll have a fair amount of innings this year.
Yeah, it all depends
about him.
It all depends on what your leagues have. If it's a pure innings, you get points for innings, you get points for strikeouts. Like if it's a points league, then sure, because he is going to get the innings. I just don't think he's going to see that back end opportunities. You know, the Jays bullpen is all we do is look at the Jays really, but even with Ryan Baraki, he's going to get tons of innings. He looked really good last year. Tyler Chatwood has looked really good this year, and he's someone who said he's actually very comfortable in the bullpen role that he had it last year. So there's a lot of guys to keep your eye on, and it's basically just when they start riding hot hands, don't be afraid to pick up and drop to get some saves.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to finish things off here by talking about where we think the Jays are going to finish this year. You can say where you think they're going to finish in the AL East, or you can just give me a record. It doesn't really matter to me. Kev, I'm not going to start with you because you bitched at me last time for going to you first. So, Middy, I'm going to go to you first. The over-under, like we talked about at the start of the show, is 86.5. To win the division, you'd think the Jays would have to get what? 92 or more?
To win the division, I think I do. Man, I've been so down on the Yankees, but I think if the Yankees stay healthy and, you know, that rotation is good, the lineup is obviously incredible. I think they're 100 to 102 win team. So I know I've been saying that the Jays will be right there with the Yankees if they're not healthy. If Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge do what they do and get hurt, then I think the Jays have a shot at this division. But let's just say everything goes to plan. Everyone is who they are. I'm putting these Blue Jays at a 93-69 record, which is going to put them in the very first wild card spot. And they're going to be heading over to Tampa Bay to play that wild card game, I'm saying. And I am going to pick Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to lead this team in home runs this year, even though I just went over and talked about it. I just don't think the home run totals are going to be very high on this team, period. I'm putting Vladdy at 32 home runs to lead this team.
Mark it down right there.
I don't think it's much of a contest. If you get a full healthy season out of Bichette, he's got to be up there in the conversation. The kid's ball just launches. I
wanted to say that because I knew that somebody was going to be just butthurt by it. Something was going to come up.
Hey, but that's a really good thing that we didn't bring up before about the Semien thing. That's why I didn't really shit all over that, because, you know, Bichette needs to prove that he can play not only as a shortstop in the majors defensively, but on a regular basis. And I don't think they could have gone through another year with having Espinal as your emergency backup shortstop. So you had to have signed somebody with a little bit of experience. I don't think Biggio is done playing second. I do think there will be some maintenance done with Bichette, and then Semien will be playing short. There will be some moves to be made there. But the nice thing is Charlie Montoyo has a lot of versatility. What was your question? I lost my train of thought.
Well, on that, when we talked to, I believe it was Arden Zwelling, when we talked to him, he mentioned that Bo Bichette, this is kind of a make or break year for him defensively, because there are so many shortstops available next year. And if, you know, a 1-year deal for Semien basically says, hey, Bichette, figure it out, or we're moving you to second, we're going to get a shortstop, because defensively he has not been the stud. Nobody expect him to be a stud, but he needs to figure it out to play major league shortstop. But I think we were talking about where the Jays are going to finish and their record.
I had 85-77.
So, does that equal 162? Does the math work?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just checking. I'm checking with Noah.
I think
I just do quick math in my head.
What's that?
Tyler just thinks I got quick math going on in my head.
Well, you said it pretty quick. You said yes.
You're the one who went Japan like not 2 minutes ago.
It makes sense. You want to know the easy way to do it, Middy? And this doesn't give you a foolproof way, but 85 and 77, 80 and 50, or what'd you say? 85, 77, 80 and 70 equals like the 150, and then you add the 7 and the 5, it's 12. There's 162. So this guy's laughing at me.
We got a spelling segment for Middy, and we got a math segment for Smitty.
0 for 4 in the keywords of the week for Mark. And you also got to keep in mind. Yeah, he's fine. This guy didn't know who Beetlejuice was. Man, come on. Like, culture yourself for once. Jesus. Holy cow. Blue Jays will finish this season 95 wins.
Whoa.
95
Holy
wins.
crap.
Whoa.
95 wins.
Who are they?
And they will win the
No, they
division.
can't play the Red Sox that many times, right?
95 wins and they will win the division. And that is that. 95, 67, and they will win the division.
Let's end on that.
Let's end on that because Middy's not going to make it through another 5 minutes of this shit show. So,
well, okay. The problem is they're going to be playing with I believe with all this league stuff. They are going to end up playing the NL East a little bit more, I believe, this year, just for travel purposes, because COVID is still a thing. So the NL East is really strong with the Mets and the Phillies and whoever else is in that division. So they're in tough, and they're going to have to play well, because they're not going to have very many walkover games, but 95 is aggressive. 95 is aggressive, but I say it. It is only two more than now. Me. Yeah, he's literally two more wins.
I do the clipping, okay? I'm not clipping that.
2 more wins than what Middy picked, but it's
We're
aggressive.
going to lose our moneyless jobs if I clip that.
But you're going to clip it. Once the Blue Jays finish this season with 95 wins and they win the division, you're going to clip that and you're going to go back and say, Smitty's the smartest, and then I'm going to give myself a raise. That's how it's going to go. You're going to
give yourself a raise. What are you going to double your pay? What's 2 times 0?
How do the numbers work on raises?
I think it's a carrot.
A carrot. Nibble.
He doesn't get that reference though, because he doesn't know who Beetlejuice is. Thank you for listening to the Smitty and Middy Show, Blue Jays preseason show, as we broke down the Jays. Producer Kevin, Tyler Middleton, Noah Smith, thank you to Goldline Curling and Dave Middleton at Sun Life Financial for sponsoring this show, and we look forward to seeing you on our regularly scheduled programming next week.